Because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk in closet.
I still got 3 years of parole left.
Because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk in closet.
Hello, hello. It is From Felon to Fabulous. I'm Brenda Ringwood, and I'm going to bring up Isabel Black from Activate Your Power Now and from Becoming the Better You. And we've got a great combo for you today about felons becoming fabulous. Hello,
Hey, what's up? What's going on, Professor of Change?
Oh, change is happening. We just did a huge youth event. Well, actually, we have done 3 youth events in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we
Get to the
so
youth.
blessed.
They become felons.
That's right. Let's get them while they're young and show them that there's options out there. There's options out there for all of us, and it's up to us to pick, right?
It is. It is. So our guest is having technical problems, so we're just going to kind of talk through some things and kind of fill them in about why we even started this. So I want to know your take on why we did From Felon to Fabulous.
Well, when you invited me to be a part of this show, which I'm so very thankful, alongside with the Becoming the Better You talk show, but I accepted that one first, and I was excited about that, right? Interviewing ordinary people doing extraordinary things in life. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. I love that. I can't wait to hear these stories. And then you came next and mentioned Felon and Fabulous to me. And I was like, wow, wow. Like it was one of those moments that God had showed me. I would be working when I stopped being a corrections officer. I loved what I was doing, but I was needed to be at home more. So I had to make a choice, family, career, and I chose my family, and I have no regrets, but God kept showing me that wasn't the end, and that I was going to be helping these people even more than how I was being called to help them while I was working there. And I just got super excited again. You know, just because you have the title of a felon doesn't mean that's who you are in life. It's just a part of your story. So we're here to just help people. The way I see it is help them share the stories of them detaching, right? All of the guilt, the shame, and all of the unserving things that we carry forward in life about our past, and then they keep us from going where we've always seen ourselves going in life.
You
So
know, and I'm so glad you said that, because you said where we see ourselves going in life. We don't know where that is sometimes, but we can kind of direct that. So I kind of want to start there, because I was hiding, and you brought up God. I was hiding from God, and it led me down the path where I ended up in prison. But let me tell you, I was hiding when I came out, because I was told to do this first, and I didn't. So I went with becoming the better you, because I was still hiding. And
right,
then we had some things happen, and you know what? You can't change your past, so you might as well embrace it and move on with it. And here we are, we're sitting here with From Felon to Fabulous. And you know, what amazing people have we interviewed on this show? Have we met in our lives? And some of you didn't even know were a felon until
right,
you knew they were a felon.
right,
And, you know, that's kind of a cool thing, and change is real. You know, I talk about change constantly. It's why I'm called the professor of change, and it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It is
right.
a process. It is a journey. But you saw and lived right there with some felons as a prison guard. And when people say, "What do you mean she lived right there with them?" You couldn't leave until your shift was over.
Right. And I was in a county jail, so I did transports to the
Mhm.
prison, but I didn't work in the prison. And for me, the stories I would hear from them about the difference between the jail and prison, they would say prison, it's more comfortable, you have more amenities, I guess, is what they would kind of refer it to. But what I noticed from the stories, hearing the stories, and then my family who's been to prison, you know, I almost everybody I know growing up with and stuff has been in prison. And I could see in the people that were going still through the court process and still carrying the burden of, you know, just the process of before they even get sentenced and then that labeled as a felon. There's that whole process of people sitting in the county jail waiting for their next court hearing, still holding on the fear of everything that's just falling apart that they've just left behind. And they're sitting there now. They're, you know, so worried. They're still carrying. They haven't got comfortable. Like I said, they say when you get to prison, you get a little more comfortable than the county jail. And just watching the amount of anxiety, you know, I would remember sitting in the pod when I'd be a pod officer, and I would just be breathing for them, you know, and I could feel if we could just breathe as one. And, you know, my background being early childhood education, I had already learned, right, with the little ones, brain development and, you know, just a lot of things about the family structure, just so much information. And I'm like, wow, this is when there's a lack of stability, a lack of someone loved and secure and safe. That's really the root of a lot of the majority of the people that I would experience. And some people are scary. We had some murders in there, male and female. And, but for me, I always felt safe. And I just always felt like if I could just show up in a compassionate, that's when I really started practicing compassion and empathy. Um, And it's just such a great experience. So like I said, the fact that I get the opportunity to serve in this way, hear these stories, and be able to be a resource in any way with Activate Your Power Now, becoming the better you, I'm all here for it. So, and guys, if you're watching, reach out if you have a story to tell, if you've been a felon, if you've loved a felon, if you've um, worked with felons, just whatever the story is. It doesn't just affect the felon. There's many other people that it affects in the world around them. So reach out. We would love to hear your story and maybe even get you on the show.
One of the things too that I've kind of dealt with myself is I had to get past the shame and the embarrassment, the feeling unworthy, feeling that I wasn't good enough, feeling that I had ruined my life, my reputation, my testimony, all of that. And I had to realize that, yes, all of that happened. Yes, all of that is true, but it doesn't have to remain that way.
Right.
And I was speaking, and I usually tell my story, and I had a teacher say, the kids have parents that are incarcerated.
Right.
So they need to know that they have a value. And because their parent is incarcerated, doesn't mean that they will be, doesn't mean that they're worthless. It doesn't mean that they're any worse off than anybody else or less of a person. And that goes with even the families, the mothers, the fathers, the aunts, the uncles, the nephews, the kids, the grandkids. People go to prison at all ages. It's not just a young thing. I didn't go till I was 40.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no,
Yes.
it does definitely, like you've said before, it does not discriminate. That's for sure.
Mm.
So, but yeah, you touched on a couple things that just really emphasized why we do BTBY youth. The fact that if they can just know there's choices and know just because your parents or your siblings and stuff have been to prison or in prison doesn't mean that you have to, but the likeliness, there's a higher chance than if they weren't. So
Right.
the reality is they have to be informed of the choices. They have to see real examples of the cycle being broken, these stories being told, why we do the show, so that they can know. That's what's going to help them know that they have choices, they have options, and they don't have to go down that same route.
Right.
Just because I didn't make it to prison doesn't mean I was on my way with the lifestyle I was living. And they were actually sending me to a girls' correctional farm at 14 till I was 19, 18 on good behavior. I was blessed. I escaped where they were holding me for 2 months before they sent me off.
You escaped?
Yeah, I did. And I was on the run at 14 years old. It only lasted a couple months. My sister was in jail. My mom was locked up in the mental state hospital. So there was nobody. Me and my sister went to jail together that night. So yeah, I lived with these two guys. I didn't even know. I was 14. One was 15. His brother was 22. And he escaped with me. It was a co-ed house that they called the Runaway Center. And they were just holding me there while they processed me to go to this farm. Well, by the time I turned myself in, they asked why I did it, why I ran. And I knew how to vocalize myself already at that age. And I just told him I didn't belong there. I did not belong there. It was not going to help me in any way. And they gave me an opportunity to go to family or someone that would take custody of me outside of the state of Texas. And that's when I went to the suburbs of Chicago when I was 14. Ooh. So I was on my way. They gave me a chance. The charges I had that led up to that, they were escalating. It started, I was just fighting. I was in a couple times for fighting. And then next thing you know, I have charges pressed against me because I attacked this girl and her daughter who was in her vehicle, which was a show vehicle that she'd show in car shows. And I messed her vehicle up. I was going to be in a lot of trouble for that. And God, again, I've always been protected. Yeah, they didn't show up to court they partied the night before, didn't show up to court, and they dropped all the charges.
Mm-hmm.
So God has always given me an opportunity to do better. And thank goodness there were people it wasn't my family, there were people in my path that I would encounter in life that would come just drop little golden nuggets on me. And that's what started making me realize I had choices in life. I had choices. And I
All
didn't
because somebody
have to
dropped
go down
those
the
nuggets.
same path
Mhm.
as my mom, dad, sister, brother. I did not have to go down the same path.
You know, something else happened to you. So you were heavily involved with gangs, drugs, transportation of drugs across a border as a youth,
Right,
teenage pregnancy.
right,
I mean, you have overcome so many things, and by
right.
all rights should have been in prison.
Right. I was like, I was headed there. Both of my children's, but my two sons, their father went to prison while we were together. And my daughter's biological father, he's serving life in prison. So it's everywhere I turn. It's the environment I grew up in. It was very normal to me. You know, the things I had, the cycles I had to break within myself, the programming and everything has, it didn't look pretty. It didn't look pretty. People will turn their back on you. People will tell you you've changed, and they want to criticize you for it, and they'll hold you back and make you question if you're going the right path or not. I mean, because then you're interfering with loyalty. You know, when you
Mhm.
choose to be your own person, when you give yourself to a gang and to a certain life, you give yourself. And
Yeah,
I
that
was
becomes your family, becomes
and
your
I
life.
was fully given at that young age. But when I moved to Kansas and I said I will not, and it wasn't the fear that my kids would be in a gang or sell drugs, because that was the easy part. My fear, or even going to prison, it's just one of those things that it happens. You know what I mean? It happens, is the attitude we had. You go, you get out, try again. Um, but yeah, I lost my train of thought. But yes, so
Mhm.
much. I was on the path.
And see, I wasn't on the path. I mean, I did things wrong as a teenager, but I didn't have that life. I was the privileged white girl. You know, I had a army officer father. I was an only child, had pretty much everything I wanted. And, you know, I drank. I stayed drunk from the age of 13 to 17. So I had issues there, but I wasn't doing anything to hurt anybody else. It was all me, stuff to myself. And here I go to prison at the age of 46 years old. So it's really about your choices, and it affects your choices that you make is a lifelong thing, because you can make a choice at 99 that can land you in prison. It does not discriminate
Absolutely.
on age.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
And
we
it was,
always are doing something simple that we wouldn't even, a car accident because you're being negligent while you're driving, will change your life.
it
You know,
sure will. It sure will.
in
And
so
even,
many ways.
even if
And
you've had a
prison.
drink, right. Even if you've had a drink and you're still below the legal limit, it can still change your life. It can
Right,
still change your life
right,
when that happens, an accident, or I've talked with many people who have lost family members from people drinking and driving, and
right.
it's not, people tend to downplay that. That's just as serious as somebody that went to prison for selling drugs. It really is. And every state is different on what they do. State and federal prisons are completely different in how they do things. And several of our guests have been to different states in prison, or one, or
Mhm.
state and federal prison. But I'm excited because we've got some actors coming up. We've got some very successful businessmen coming up. Um, People from all walks of life that you would not even suspect were a
Wow.
felon. And I was driving down the road to one of our events with some of our people,
Uh-huh.
and there was four of us in the car, and three of the four of us were felons in that car,
Wow.
and I didn't know that. And
Wow.
they never did time. One of them never did time, but there was still a charge on their record,
Right.
and I would have never guessed that. And am I making that, am I glorifying that? Absolutely not. I am not condoning being a felon at all. What I am supporting is the changed life that a felon after incarceration can make. And
Yeah.
not only make within themselves, but can help others to make those changes and to overcome. So it's not just enough to help one person. We need to be the better person in everything that we do so we can help anybody that needs that help.
Right.
And we've kind of started our journeys together. And you've got a great platform with Activate Your Power Now. Why did you decide to go with that name? And why is it that people need to be activated? Because that applies to felons and their families.
Absolutely. Everybody can use activation. And the beauty is you get to choose where you where you start your activation: career, family, spirituality, health. I mean, you name it. But yeah, thanks for asking, Bryn. We're really proud of our platform as well. You know, we're about just owning your story with no shame, embracing it, but embracing it with love, learning to love yourself for your past, through your shadows, and know that you are both light and dark. It's a matter of choice, right? Who we're going to choose to show up as. So that's what we help people with at Activate Your Power Now. And the name actually came, James Love, who is the other main activator. We're the founders of Activate Your Power Now. And it was a homework assignment for a speaking class we had taken. And we were hosting an event, and we were asked what we were going to name the event. We needed a title. So James said, well, activate your power. He said, activate your power, because I feel like we're being activated. Like you said, Bryn, our stories kind of started, our spark, our activation started around the same time when we started these platforms. And I told him when he said that, I'm like, that's perfect. That's perfect. Activate your power. I said, but God keeps giving me an urgency. He's like, since 2020, he's just, man, he's making himself clear. There's no room for error. I can't even pretend I'm not hearing. He's showing me physically in front of me over and over. And I said, we have to do it now. So let's activate your power now. No time to wait. So that's where it came from. And that was December of 2021.
And here we are 3 years later.
I know. I'm so excited. I mean, we've just really grown a lot together, all three of us, and the rest of the tribe extended out all ways. We're so blessed with a community of people who truly want to become better. And that can mean anything as well. Become better in life. What can I do? And Activate Your Power Now, we want to help you create that power path process, that day-to-day intentional gratitude life, so that you can be the best you that you can be, or the better.
No, absolutely. Which is why we have comechangeyourlife.com.
Yeah.
Because we want you to have a better life, regardless of your past, regardless of where you've been, regardless of what your job status is, your marital status, your anything status. We want you to become better. So if you're a felon, we want you to become better. If you're just somebody who's stuck in life, we want you to become better. And that's why we do some of the things that we do. And we have such a tremendous outpouring of people who want to help. We have over 50 different speakers that are also coaches and people who truly want to see you become the best version of yourself. And it's an inside job. It is an inside job. And it's possible if you want change.
Right.
So there is something brewing with From Felon to Fabulous.
Ooh.
We're going to be having a conference. We're going to be having some spectacular giveaways, some services, and you name it, just wait. So you have to stay tuned for the next shows coming up. We have Brendan Pearl, which is Boss Pearl, coming up. Charles D. Clark, which is coming up, both actors. You just got to stay tuned. There's so much. But if you go over to FromFelonToFabulous.com, you can see some past interviews and some past shows. If you go to From Felon to Fabulous YouTube, You can see all of our shows. If you go to E360, which is e360tv.com, you can actually download the app and watch it right from your home on your television. So, I want to hear some stories with you because your father's even in prison right now.
Yes.
What was it like growing up in that atmosphere?
Well, I moved out of his house when I was in right after third grade, and I moved in with his sister. She was married, and they had 2 kids. But I'll say from first grade to third grade, it was very scary.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those things, one day to the next, you just didn't know what to expect to happen. He would be home. He was the head of the security at the El Paso International Airport. So, but he's always also been involved in other things, side hustles that aren't legal. And he'd be gone, for weeks at a time. And we were very trained on what to do, what not to do, what we were allowed to say, not say. And so just with that in mind, working a lot and then being out doing things he shouldn't be doing, when we would get him home, and I'm assuming he was using also, we just got all the mood swings, right? He was tired. He was a single father of 3. So at that point, so we just got we got the bad side while he was still trying to learn. I realized that now being a parent, it's like we literally don't know what we're doing when our kids are young. So it was scary. But yes, he's in prison now, and I believe that's why I do what we do. Change is within everybody. So God has him there with grand purpose. And I just lift him up every day, knowing that just because he's there doesn't mean God is not using him. And just because he has made certain decisions in his life that have led him there doesn't mean that he's not deserving of a peaceful, productive life where he can give back to society instead of causing division.
That's right. That's right. We have people in our own community like Arkevius Armstrong, who did many, many years for a very violent crime, who is out now, man, just kicking it. He's in schools, he's done a transformation, and he's helping young men to become better people. And you can go over to arkinspired.com to hear about him. We've already interviewed Chuck Doyle, who went to prison at 15. These are young men going to prison. It's just absolutely crazy to be in a men's prison at 15. But then again, when you're running the streets like that, you're a lot older than the average 15-year-old. So I kind of see both sides. The other thing that we have is and Arkevius has been on the B2BY show, but he's getting ready to be on this show as well.
Right.
We just had the show with Bill Corum, who was a hitman. I mean, he was a hitman. Now that was 30, 40 years ago. And so when I first met him, I was actually in prison, and he came to talk to us. He's been in over 500 prisons sharing the word of God. But what I'm saying about that is I read his book, The Ultimate Pardon, and he couldn't bring up names because some of his crimes and the people were so bad that they would come after him. So he couldn't use names.
Yeah.
Well, now when I talk to him, he says names because those people are dead. And to keep those stories and those secrets, it's crazy. I've got another show that I'm going to air that I did, before even BTBY, and it was with a guy that was with the Green Wall. Not the Green Wall. Yeah, the Green Wall. So he wrote a book called The Green Wall, and he was a prison guard in California. And he exposed a gang of correctional officers who were misreading prisoners, sometimes even death. And he had to go into witness protection over it.
Wow.
It was
That's going to be a good one too.
His name is DJ Vodka, and it's just a great show. So you just don't know what's happening. So, it's its own little city in prison. you have mail, you have food, you buy your food, you have a job, you go home to your corner of the prison that's yours, and life still continues.
Mm-hmm.
So all the bad people that you're working with on the outside are still with you on the inside. So there's no difference there, including the officers. So when I was incarcerated, we had this thing called the black case. And the black case was a drug ring inside of CCA in Leavenworth.
Wow.
It was huge. And I saw cells getting kicked in from U.S. Marshals. So here you are already incarcerated. You're already in a cell, and U.S. Marshals are storming in, kicking. They lock the place down. They kick open these cells, and they grab the stuff that's in there. Now, they're not supposed to have access. So if you have court files and stuff in there, your paperwork's not supposed to be accessible to the guards, to anybody that walks in there. And you get rearrested again while you're already in jail. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, that there was a drug ring that involved correctional officers, and they were bringing that into, this was a maximum security federal detention center, and drugs were coming in. And I will tell you, I had officers serving us McDonald's cheeseburgers from the outside, fried chicken from the outside.
Wow.
You'd be surprised. Barrettes from the outside, bobby pins from the outside. And, you know, these girls are walking around with this stuff in their hair and knowing that it's coming in from the outside. I also saw rings from people who had gotten arrested and would store them inside body cavities. And they used that as their way to get their commissary in there.
Right.
Super crazy. Super crazy. That's one of those Facebook users says that. But the story was true. All those guards went away, and one of them ended up in that prison. Now imagine that. So that probably was not a good place for that one. And there's only so much you can do. You don't, in that particular prison, the hole or segregation was its own unit, and you were inside a cell by yourself within its own unit. You got to come out 1 hour a day. And I know every seg is about like that, but this was bad. It was really bad. At least the women's segregation, there was 3 cells within the unit that had a chain link gate around a fence around it. So, I mean, it was floor to ceiling, but you couldn't get to them, but you could still see out, and you could still see what was going on in the day room. People could still yell at you through the doors. You know, it was kind of crazy. And if the guard's sitting in there, they would even allow you to pass them snacks or pass them books or pass them notes. And, you know, things that really shouldn't be happening. But if you were in the full 100% seg unit, none of that was going on. And I would imagine that some of those guards, that's probably where they were at. I think there was about 6 of them. It was absolutely crazy.
Even at the jail. Even at the county jail, we had an officer get arrested and get charged with making deals with some of the people that were in the jail. Well, this one man.
Everybody assumes because you're in prison, you are poor. There's a lot of wealthy people in prison. You know, just I knew somebody that was throwing cigarettes over the fence, and then they would sell them for commissary in there. The drugs were coming in, and the inmates would distribute them throughout. And yes, they would get paid in commissary, but then the family had to pay on the outside. So it was a double whammy. So they were getting their chips, right? And then the family was having to pay. And what happened if the family didn't pay? The family got hurt. All from inside. And it's absolutely crazy what goes on. You know, people don't believe it. People don't think it happens, but it happens. The same stuff. People get killed in prison. Even in the women's, I saw a lot of violence, maybe not as much as the men, but I saw beatdowns. I saw women unconscious. I saw people slamming heads into the metal tabletops, busted teeth, you know, just horrible things. And the only thing that they do when they come in is they mace you and they lock everybody down. I never did have the gas drop from the ceiling, but I heard that had happened before at the facility that I was in. I've seen people take the phone and knock people out with it. You know, even though it's got that little short cord, they find a way. You know, it's crazy. We're not allowed to have scissors or anything else, but yet we had razor blades that you could break apart, and we used them as knives. I used them for my food to cut up, you know, and to cook my stuff. But you know, other people use them for other things. And I wrote a book while I was in there, Restitution, and it's about a female serial killer. And I was so angry when I was in there, but all of those hateful things that happened in that book were things that I learned while I was in prison that I would have never thought of had I not been there.
Thank
So
goodness.
I learned about drugs. That's why there's stories of drugs in it. They tell people to, you know, with fiction, there's some truth in fiction. They tell people to really read between the lines in some of those fiction books, right? But I'm having a hard time writing the ending to the second and third book because I'm not angry anymore. I'm not angry. And when you're not angry and you're right in the middle of a novel that started out being full of hate, right? You have a hard time finishing that. But let me tell you, it's full of truths, it's full of reality, and it's a sit on the edge of your seat, because at the time that I wrote that, like I said, I was angry, and it's about a female serial killer who kills off everybody who wronged her. And I got my frustrations out by writing that book. I actually wrote 5 books while I was in there, 3 of which are published now.
Nice.
3 of which are published.
What's the names of the books?
So I have Restitution, which is a thriller. I have The Cloak, which is a horror novel. I love horror movies. So when I wasn't angry anymore, I decided, okay, let's just try this. And I would write them like 10 pages at a time and send them home.
Okay.
So my mom would keep them together for me. And then when I got out, I was so sick that I couldn't, they were handwritten because we didn't have access to typewriters or computers. I was so sick that I physically could not type it in my computer. Looking from the paper to the computer screen made me nauseous and dizzy. And I had been away from technology for so long. It was unbelievable, the thing that the body goes through, right? And I physically couldn't do it. So I found a publisher who was able to translate it for me and take it from handwritten to type. So, you know, it cost a little bit more than what the normal publisher would charge because of that. But, you know, that went away. I had surgeries to fix some of that. And now I'm able to look at the computer, obviously, and to do some other things. But the thing that I realized the most is I found myself in there. I've realized who I was and what talents I had. And I had the time to think about it, but I decided I'm not going to let this be a waste of my time.
Right.
Get out. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be somebody, and I'm going to help.
You are making a difference.
We're trying. It's a we, because you're right there with us. We have a team.
But I want you to know, yes, we are, but I want you are making a difference. And I thank you for that, because you have made a difference in my life. And then I know many others. So you are making a difference. And we are making a difference together.
We are making a difference together. But you have to want to do it.
Yes.
See, that's what I tell people. Change is real, but you have to want to do it.
And again, with a Power Path process, you can learn to keep doing it even at the times where you think you don't want to do it anymore. We all have vulnerable moments. We all feel overwhelmed at times, but it's learning to trust the process, figuring out what you believe in, and then learning to practice your belief so that you can find that peace in your life. You can find that purpose. So it's a choice. Yes.
Right. It sure is. It is a big choice. And it's a choice to continue, because, let me tell you, I've been tested, and it hasn't been fun, because your old you wants to come out, right? Your old you wants to come out, and you're kind of stuffing it down, and you want to go chew this person out, or you want to be a little bit vindictive, and you have to stop. You have to stop and realize, wait, that's just going to hurt me later. I can be vindictive. Yes, I can go and do some things that might cause some temporary pain to that person. But the reality is that makes you look very shallow and petty.
Right. And it doesn't make us look like a good leader if we're showing up in that way. And we have to beautiful, wonderful platforms where we are impacting many people, and it just doesn't fit in the narrative. So you make the choice.
You sure do. And by doing things differently, the best revenge is just success.
Absolutely.
Just continue down the path. And let me tell you, those folks that are coming out of prison, yeah, it's hard. And our system is set up for you to fail. It is. You're either in a halfway house, or you're reporting to probation and parole, or you have an ankle monitor and you have drug testing and you got to take off work to go see these people. And you basically are having to announce to the world that you are a felon. So that's embarrassing too. Bosses may or may not want to work with you when you have to have this time off. You're going to take the lowest rate of pay because you have to have a job or you're going to go back in, regardless if that job pays you enough to have a nice living. And you have to work your way up. But let me tell you, it can happen for you. Give it time, stay the course, stay positive. As Chuck says, stay positive, people, because there is something to a positive mindset. I don't care what anybody says. And what you do matters, no matter what job you're in, no matter where you live. Everything that you are experiencing right now is temporary. Remember that. It is temporary. And if you can have the mindset that this is temporary might be longer than you want, but if you continue with the mindset that this is temporary, you're going to improve and your life is going to get better. And stop comparing yourself to other people. Oh my goodness. Stop doing that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We can't
That's
do
part of
that.
the reason why
We
I ended up
are uniquely beautiful just as we are. So no need to compare. It's not a competition. Life is not a competition. Life is about collaboration, about us learning to coexist peacefully, right? Accepting. It doesn't mean you accept all their behaviors and choices in their life, but you're accepting them as a fellow human being. We're all in this, learning this walk of life together and
Yeah,
experiencing
and if
it
they're not,
together.
that's right. If they're not with you, then find somebody else to do it together with,
Keep
because they're not.
moving. Just keep
And
moving.
if you want to look at something, and I did this the other day, I was kind of chuckling, because if you go over to from felontofabulous.com and you go into the interviews, there are interviews on there before we started Becoming the Better You, before we started From Felon to Fabulous, before Activate Your Power Now ever started. And I probably have on my YouTube 50 interviews about somebody from prison guards, prison this, prison that. It's not just felons. It is anything to do with prison, where we were educating the good, the bad, the ugly, or whatever. Because I'm not anti-prison, believe it or not. I'm not anti-cops, but I am for doing the right thing. And I am for change. So if you're not going to change, then, I guess don't watch our show. But go over to that website and check out you will see some of my interviewing skills. You're going to go, wow, what was she thinking, right? But we all have to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
So COVID had started, and I was tired of not doing anything. And I was thinking, I'm going to get my speaking career going again. So let me just start interviewing people. And I did. I found guests, and here we are. I originally was going to start From Felon to Fabulous, and I was hiding, and I started BTBY first. And now here we go. So if you go back to that, you'll see where my heart was. Go on over to felontofabulous.com, or go on over to Brenda Ringwood YouTube, and you will see exact talk about. You have to go back because there's like 300 videos on it. But you got to start somewhere.
That's what I was going to say. You said yes courageously. You didn't, you were hiding, you weren't ready to fully expose, but you still said yes. You still took action. And that's
I did. And I interviewed one of my COs, one of my correctional officers. And so some of the interviews up until then, I hadn't really shared my story. I was only interviewing other people, like people didn't know, right? And when she started talking about me, I was like, oh, shh, shh, shh. I didn't want to go there. And then the more I did it and the more I shushed it, the more people kept saying, we want to hear your story. And then the very first time I shared my story from a stage, you were there. And it was the very first Becoming the Best You. It was Best You at that time. And I didn't really say what happened. I just said where I was and how I overcame it. And afterwards, they said, what did you do? What did you do that you were going to get that much time? You know, they were now, everybody was intrigued, but I needed that push because I wasn't going to share my story. I had started Becoming the Best You at that time because I was sick of the way I was being treated. And I wanted a platform where others could have a voice, where others could show people that you can overcome and you still matter, that your path doesn't matter, that if you're stuck in life, that you can move forward. And I was going to talk about something completely different. And as I was walking up them steps, God said, share your story. And that entire audience lined up to give me a hug. And that's when I knew that this had to go further, that people needed this. And there are people out there that are going to judge you, but there's also people out there that want to help you.
Right, exactly.
And I'm choosing to be the one that helps.
Yay.
Which is what you guys do. That's where I met you and James and the entire Activate Your Power Now group. And through my connections, things just started growing, and it can happen for you. It can happen for you listeners out there. Whatever that dream is, don't wake up and think it's going to happen, but you got to start it or it'll never.
And then you said earlier that if you don't plan on changing, don't watch the show, but I'm going to challenge you. If you don't plan on changing, to watch it double, triple, until it reaches you, activates you.
Absolutely.
Don't run from change, because
these are life-changing stories. And let me tell you, my mentor, and I talk about him all the time, he's never been to prison, Dr. Reuben West, but incarceration has touched his family. So you would be surprised at the people who are mighty, mighty men and women doing wonderful things that incarceration has touched them. You just don't know. You just don't know. All right.
Well, judge a book by the cover.
So stay tuned. We've got some fantastic interviews lined up. Some of them in person, some of them virtually, but stay tuned. It's getting ready to start rocking and rolling. We've been talking about this for a year now, and it is finally coming out of the gate. Good things, great things take time. And we are here. Our time is now.
Yes.
So we've got a couple little videos for you to watch, and we will be back next week, 6:30. Or do you want to be the person that's helpful, that soothes, that loves? Because you can still stand tall and be as big as you want to be when you are this person.